Welcome to Cheaper Than Therapy, a podcast that journeys into conversations with the intention of demystifying, destigmatizing, and desensitizing what really gets talked about behind the closed doors of the therapy room.
I'm Vanessa Bennett.
And I'm Danae Selkin.
And we're seekers, soul sisters, and holders of sacred space. So join us as we dive into the ways that therapy can be connecting not only to yourself, but also to those around you.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Cheaper Than Therapy.
Danae and I are super excited to talk about the fact that we have our first in-person retreat coming up this January, the first week actually, January 2nd through 7th in Carefree, Arizona. It's going to be a stunner.
So this retreat is happening at Savannah Retreat, which is like, I could not be more excited for this.
I know.
It's so beautiful, so luxurious. And, you know, I feel like we have been so hungry to come together in community for certainly over a year now. And, you know, we were really committed to we want to do this in a way that feels safe for everyone and in a way that we can really hold some therapeutic containing work, but also really create community in a way that all of us have been so hungry to feel it for so long now.
Yeah. And if you guys are listening to the podcast, then you know what Danae and I are about, right? You know that we are all about getting in there, deep diving, getting beneath the surface. And so we're going to bring together, it's basically going to be a week of us bringing together all of the deepest, most integrative work that her and I do on a day-to-day basis, right? So we're going to be doing shadow work. We're going to be doing inner child work. We're going to be talking about the mother wound. We're going to be, getting in and digging out old codependent relationship behaviors and patterns. I mean, there is so much that we are packing into this week. That
thematic healing work. And, we're going to dive into masculine and feminine dynamics, which we're obsessed with. But, to me, this is really going to be like us supporting you in leveling up, not only your spiritual tools and your toolkit in general, but, how you want to enter 2022, right?
Yeah. How can you learn to live from the most authentic place or the most authentic space that you possibly can? That is really our hope, to be able to give you the tools to do that in the best way that you can.
Love it. This is From Self-Abandonment to Inner Belonging, the intensive, like you said, V, January 2nd through 7th in Carefree, Arizona. Join us.
Yeah. It's on my website, vanessabennett.com/retreats. So today we are talking to Sarah, and Sarah wrote in with an interesting topic. I mean, I think it's something that I have heard a handful of times with other clients, and with my partner. Actually, we've discussed something similar as well. So Sarah, it sounds like you recently went through a breakup, and it sounds like the breakup included a wedding that was called off only a couple days prior. Right. And one of the larger kind of underlying topics is really around specifically in Asian culture, but when it's not just about the partner, it's also about the family and, how much of this is like, I need to also marry the family versus the other person. Right. And struggling kind of with like, how do I date now that all of this has come?
So true. So this was 2 years back, but feels like a year back because of the whole COVID. I think that whole 1 year went into maybe therapy. Most for me, it was just being alone and being with myself and figuring out what went wrong, even from my side. So, and after that, dating again. Oh my God, it's been a struggle to say the least. And in our Asian culture, it's just, you not only see the guy, you see the parents, you see the family. And if it's not that you see them, they see you. And they are so involved in our lives. Like, we don't move out after 18. We stay with our parents, we stay with our families. And even if we don't stay together, they are continuously part of our small decisions to big decisions. Like, I'll give you an example. I came across this guy, very kind, down to earth, but just a kind soul. And for some reason, I liked being friends with him, but didn't want to take it further. So I was very clear from the start that I'm not ready. I am not ready for a full-on relationship. I'm not ready to get into this thing. And suddenly the parents come in and say, no, either don't talk to her or just date. Seriously. Like, there was no middle ground for me to move on.
Yeah.
And it just got complicated because honestly, more than a partner, I need friends right now. And to have found such a good friend and to just leave it because of complications, it just didn't sit right with me because my parents never did this to me. So they are a big part of my lives. Like I can't even take any big decision without telling them or, taking in their opinions. But it's still, for me to face something like this, it triggered me. I didn't want it to trigger me, but it triggered me so much. Like, how could I not be accepted? I think that was my underlying thing.
I was going to ask you, what did it trigger in you? So not being accepted. Okay.
Yeah. So not being accepted, not like, and why would parents always, it's just that first question that comes in, how are the parents, how are the family? And we are traditionally that culture that you stay with the parents after marriage also. So we have to take that also. So anyone asks us, is he staying with parents, is he now? And because of the whole marriage thing, for some reason I keep getting proposals from parents, and like they marriage proposals keep coming in because they feel just because I was ready for marriage, for a wedding and a marriage with that guy, I'm ready right now.
Right. So then it becomes like, how do you get to the place of feeling like you're ready for marriage when it feels like everybody else around you is almost like rushing? Like you said, there's no middle ground. It's like, we're either getting ready to get married or we're not speaking at all.
True. And it's just, and either it's the extremes, right? People just want to sleep and fuck off. Like, sorry for the language, but yeah.
I have a bad mouth too.
So it's either of the two spectrums. I don't know how to find middle ground, and then I'm continuously getting triggered and continuously having these bad dates that I'm like, forget dating. I don't want to date now. I want to be with myself more. Like I would rather be alone and not cope with the anxiety around it.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I just finished reading Dr. Shefali Spari, I think is how you say her last name, her book, A Radical Awakening. And she talks a lot about this in the context of Asian cultures and, the cultural pressures around marriage and and women. And, what I found so interesting that she spoke to was that a lot of times the cultural component of families that you're speaking to is just sort of like, how do I say this? Like the blatant extreme of what's happening on a cultural level anyway. Meaning, I think a lot of times what our culture presents to women is it's 20, you're like around 28, that biological clock, like you need to get married, hurry up. Like, what are you doing? Where's the husband? Where's the babies? Like, let's get going. And so maybe it's a little bit less, blatant on a like cultural collective level, but when my family is so like in my face with the extreme, or families are with the extreme of like, no, you were ready, like you should still be ready, let's go, let's get this marriage thing done. It's really dehumanizing, to be honest.
It's not about you at all, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could be anything. You're just like an object to marry my son, to create some babies, to carry on this lineage. And I just want to speak to like what that feels like internally to be objectified in that way.
Yeah, it feels not accepting. Like I think, fine, I should be accepted for who I am. I should not be changing continuously how I how I feel about stuff, or how I should be able to say that I don't like a guy and want to be friends. I should be able to say that I am not ready. I'm 28, but I'm still not ready, even for a serious relationship. No, I can't. I have been dating since I was 14. I think I've never, I don't think, and I was in a 7-year relationship with this guy. And we called off our wedding 2 days before. We were engaged for a year. So it was just something.
How do you feel about that now? So it's been a couple of years. Can I ask where you're at with the feelings around the relationship that ended and the called off wedding? Like, are you feeling in a place of peace and acceptance about that?
Yes. Relieved because the last 10-20 days, I think, was pure torture for me. Like I don't recognize myself from that phase of my life. I'd become this crying, clingy kind of a person who was just begging for someone to be with her.
Yeah.
That person clearly didn't want to. So
And that doesn't
it was
sound
just,
like you right now at all. Even in this short conversation we've had, I don't get that energy from you.
I get like that in relationships.
Mm,
I'm this out, no one would believe what I went through then.
yeah.
Because they would always feel like you must be the dominating one. You
Mm.
must be doing this. But I am not. In relationships, I become this, I think codependent is the word for it. Um I become this person who needs to be taken care of. Like I like to be taken care of for a change because
Yeah.
I've really not been a child since my childhood, I think. So
Mhm.
yeah, something, I just want to lose control to someone. I want to give up control to
Mm.
someone, to trust someone like that. But it
Mm,
just, and yeah, like things come up for me right now, and especially in this dating culture where people are like, either you date on Bumble and Tinder, where you go on these short dates and sleep and forget about it, or else you go into the marriage proposals.
mm,
Mhm.
There
Ugh.
is, and sleeping with someone is another, I think, thing for me. Never, it's so I don't know how to, I don't even think I don't know.
mm,
That's I that's another thing, because I've never slept with anyone other than that ex of mine. So
mhm,
it really brings up so many issues for me, this whole thing, dating
mhm,
culture.
mm.
God, feel that so deeply, Sarah. So I guess the question that's coming up for me, and I really want to hold with reverence, the very real cultural pressures that we feel from our family. I don't know what your situation is right now in terms of where you're living and what that looks like, but when you think about standing in the space of, for me right now, what I need is to do me a little bit. What I need is to be in the space of self exploration and really identifying what some of my own needs are before I am ready to share my life with someone else. What does that bring up? Does that feel like that's even something that could be possible to step into a little bit?
Maybe, yeah, of course, stepping into discovering myself, like what I really like. Like I
Mm,
think all my choices have been dependent on people I've dated, or
Mm,
or family. If for the first time I have, for some, a little bit given that freedom to explore what you like.
mhm,
Now I'm, last time when I was dating, I was in college and no, financially not well. Right now I'm financially well, doing well for myself.
mhm,
So I have that freedom plus the maturity to explore that part of myself. Like I want to travel, I want to really get to do stuff which I used to think, oh, I'll get married and do it.
mhm.
No, this I won't be allowed right now. Like I was never allowed on solo trips. I was never, it was always said, get married and go,
okay.
you
So,
know,
yeah.
that way.
So this feels important because
Really
this
important.
now we're in the space of like what I can do, but is
Yeah.
also very difficult to do, right?
Mhm,
Like you're in the space of what V and I would call like the individuation process and really attempting to identify like what are my truths that feel true for me versus what I have been just sort of conditioned to believe needs to be the truth.
So
And
true.
yeah, and that's I don't even for a second want to minimize how difficult embodying that space is because it's I believe some of the most difficult and important work of our
Well, and
lifetimes.
especially add the difficult factor of having to stand up and kind of justify it to your family. Right. I mean, that
Absolutely.
adds a whole layer to it. And I don't want to minimize too, like, I know when I speak about codependency, I do try, especially when I do the class around upbringing, I try to
Mm.
kind of put that caveat around, like, we are talking about this from a very Western perspective, right? Like
Mhm.
boundaries and putting all these structures in place and being individual, and like this is a very Western approach to relationships, right? And so it does need to be said that there are cultural components, whether it's the Asian culture or like Latin American cultures, for example, very collectivistic, and there's nothing wrong with being raised in and living in a collectivist culture. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of really amazing things that the Western culture actually misses out on massively, right? By how individual we all think we need to be. So it is a little bit of a give and take there too, right? Like you can still love and be accepted and held by some components to this cultural, to the cultural norms that we've been speaking of. And for your own sake, there could be parts of them that the conversations with family needs to be like, listen, this doesn't sit with me. This is what I want. This is what I desire. This is what I need. And it's tough because you're in that generation. I think that's actually happening more and more, right? That are like, this part, I'm not carrying this part on, right? Like, I don't want this part for myself. I want to travel alone, or I don't want to date right now, or whatever it is. And so you've got a little bit of stuff on your shoulders because you're kind of in that generation that's like changing it,
Yeah. And, our parents are growing with us. I've understood that part of it. Like, even they are doing it for the first time. So and right now, even they are going through massive change. My mother went from blaming me to blaming herself to right now being my support system, and telling me, go out, it's fine. You don't want to date, don't date. But she's also, at some point, because of her thing and because of her upbringing and all of that, society as such, they keep telling her, right? They keep telling her, your daughter is 28, your son is 31, get them married. What are they doing? That's the first question that comes up when people meet. What are they doing? They don't ask, how's the career going?
Yeah.
Like, I am, not to brag, but I am about to become a partner in my own firm.
That's huge. And by the way,
let's please brag. Brag on, my love. Please.
Brag.
Worked for that.
Yeah.
I am the first. I'm a chartered accountant. Okay. And I'm the first chartered accountant in 4 generations of my family with no family background, no support. I have done it, and I've become a partner in a 33-year-old firm where they wanted me. They didn't, it was like that.
Interesting how we found the wanting and the acceptance.
Yes.
We're so clearly longing for in romantic relationships, and yet we've actually made it happen for ourselves in our career.
But no one asked me that. And even if I say, if I became a partner, next question will come, so who are you dating?
Yeah.
And when that's the next thing. But and even this profession, I have had to, really deal with issues here, because there are issues with passive aggressive bosses, and and because we are at our work cultures a lot, we spend at least 10 hours a day there. So things come up more there for me. Like, I have had panic attacks all throughout, I think, when I was dealing with stuff, and it has changed a lot for me there also. That is why I was on the verge of resigning and traveling the world, and then COVID happened. So and then this happened. So things have changed for me a lot. So
but it feels, Sarah, like actually they've changed, and yet it almost feels like everything is working together. Like the way you're talking about it, the themes feel so clear. It feels like you're being presented with so many opportunities to do the same kind of work internally, whether it's, through job or through relation or through family. Like, I think what Danae said earlier, it's like, this feels like such a strong moment of individuation for you, where you're on this like cusp of being like, who am I? What do I want? What do I need? What do I demand? What should I be able to brag about? What do I, all these questions that are very normal and natural questions. Like, I mean, listen, you're in your Saturn return right now. Like, this is the time, this is the age, like 27, 28, 29, like this is it. Like, and I'm not saying that to like scare you, but it's almost exciting in a hard way.
Yes, it's exciting, but it's still hard.
I know.
It's still hard on days when it's still so hard, because I'm on everything that I have learned. I have to fight on every level, for every inch and every space you have to fight. And, for the first year, I got that whole, she's going through a breakup. It's okay. Give her what she wants. Listen to her, all of that. But I think that died down, and now it's like, okay,
back to reality now.
Yeah. So.
Sarah, listening to you talk about your mom, and I do think, because I work with a lot of clients who have similar struggles around family of origin and the cultural expectations. And I do see that there are things shifting, meaning some of what Vanessa is saying is true about how we are understanding that some of what we have been as an individualist society isn't working. And some of the ways that we need to return to some sort of like collectivist community way of experiencing one another while still being able to have authenticity and autonomy within ourselves. We're figuring out how to integrate these things. But what I will say about our parents, and, as a parent, I feel this so strongly, all our parents want is for us to be okay, for us to be safe. And a lot of times what we as parents are putting on our children are the conditionings that we have had from society, right? Like, this is what I know that my daughter needs to have and be in order to be safe in this world. And it's not from a space of not loving us. It's just from, I want to make sure you're okay. And this is what I've experienced life to be, right? But I hear you saying, my mom is attempting to really see me and understand me. And there's this line in Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed, where she says, a woman becomes a responsible adult when she becomes a disobedient daughter.
I love that line.
And I think why that's important is because sometimes what we are teaching, and, as the children of our parents, sometimes it does become our work to be the pioneers, to be the paradigm shifters, and show them that there's another way of being and we'll all be okay. You're teaching your parents as you stand in your power, you don't have to worry about me. I'm going to be okay. I believe in me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they believe in you too.
That's I think that's so true. I have to be the disobedient daughter.
Yeah.
But it's just so hard, when people it's so hard to be, because all people talk about is you. And because our community is so small, I feel I can't break away from that tag of that, she had that cancelled marriage. That's the first thing that comes up in any conversation. And I'm like, okay, move forward. And people want to know why it happened, how it happened. And I am like, no one will know except both of us what we went through, because I can't explain 7 years of things to them.
Nor should you, by the way.
Yeah.
And here's what I'd like to offer about them wanting to know why. The reason that people seek understanding of like why a relationship ends or why a marriage ended is because they're attempting to keep themselves safe. Meaning, what can I sort of guard against in my own relationship to make sure this doesn't happen to me, right? That's what they're looking for. That's their projections. And it's really not for you to hold, right? So if you can see it and stand back and say, oh, they're afraid about what they have been conditioned to believe they need to be in society to feel safe, this actually has nothing to do with me. And so I'm not gonna take that on, I know the truth of what went on behind closed doors between us. I know what is true about my life and where I'm headed. And their stuff is for them to handle, for them to work through. It's really none of my business. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the mothers of the guys are all into what did she do wrong? They are guarding themselves against that.
Well, and listen, I think the good thing, Sarah, is that like, if you know right now, because it sounds like you're pretty sure about this, like, right now that you're not in a stage or a place where you are actively looking for that, right? Like, you're not looking to get married right now, like maybe eventually fine, but right now, that's not where you're at. Yeah. So then again, going back to what Danae said, it's like, let them hold that, because I think right now the work that you're doing is so profound in that this experience doesn't define you. It's a piece of you. It is a part of your story, right? And the further along on this journey that you get, the further into this individuation process that you get, the more like integrated that story and other stories become. And the less you feel like I need to explain this one piece of myself, the less you feel like this is some kind of scarlet letter, right, that you have to carry around with you. And the further along in that journey you get, the easier it actually does become to be like, yeah, I'm not going to really answer that. Like, that's not really, we can talk about something else.
I have just started that.
Right.
I have started that.
Good for you.
I'm like, can't do that again.
No.
But
and it's not their business.
Is it wrong to want that individuation process, but still crave for that love and attention? And You
I think
know,
wrong. No way. I mean, look,
No,
we all want connection. That's a very
yeah,
normal human desire.
we're
I-
wired for it.
Wired for it, right? We're wired for connection. It's part of our survival, right? I mean, as animals, literally, you know.
Mhm.
And so it's very normal, and it's normal to want both autonomy and also attachment. Like these are the two biggest
yeah.
desires that the human animal has.
But it has to be authentic to me, attachment. It has to be
Yes.
attachment that feels like it's true to my soul. And you will know when that's the way it feels. And what I feel like we are hearing you say is that's what I'm on a quest to find, is a place where I can soften into this, this feminine essence that you're speaking to, of wanting to be held, of wanting to feel like, I can be soft and I can be safe. And this can be the space in the world where I feel okay. And I still feel like Sarah. I still feel like the
Yeah,
true expression
true.
of who I am,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just want to be, maybe, yeah, authentic connection. That's the, because I keep analyzing anyone who comes. I'll be, am I going back to my own old patterns? Am I,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so scared, that fear of, I don't know, heartbreak again.
Mm-hmm.
Can't go through that. It was hard.
Well, you said a very important word. You said analyzing, right? And so what I
Yeah.
would invite you to do is get a little bit out of the head space and drop into the body space and pay attention to how this feels. And when you start to feel fear creep in, because it inevitably will, because when we're attempting to open ourselves up to love, that is one of the most vulnerable spaces we can enter. And then ask in those moments where I start to feel like fear is creeping in, but what would love say about this? What is, my instinctual pull towards love say about this person? Like, does this resonate? Do I want this person? Right? If I'm defending against what I'm afraid of, then that's not my authentic self. If I'm moving in the direction of what my soul really loves and really feels alive when it's in the space of, then that's true.
And it's scary because if you do in any way, struggle with the codependent stuff, I mean, that authentic nature is kind of buried sometimes. And so it does take some experimentation. It takes some trial and error to actually figure out what that body sensation is, not get out of the head and actually into the body. That takes practice. That's not something that we can just turn on and off, because that head is there to protect us. And it's done a good job thus far until it didn't. And so now it's like, oh my God, what do I believe? What do I trust? Right. And that's normal. And I think that, look, even if you're not in the space to get into a serious relationship, all of these little micro experiences that you're having are still giving you an opportunity for the trial and error to pay attention to what's coming up for you in that body space that Danae is talking about. That really is your intuition. That really is your authentic self. Because when you get to the place where it feels right, by that time, you've had all these experiences that are strengthening that muscle. And so when you get to that place, you'll be able to actually listen deeper than you would if you weren't allowing yourself these little individual experiences. And by the way, these experiences are coming up at work. They're coming up in family situations, right? It's not just in the romantic relationships that we're learning how to trust ourselves. And so you don't have to be putting yourself in serious relationships in order to be feeling into and strengthening that part of yourself, right? This is a lifelong process of trial and error.
Yeah. And I feel like what I hear you saying, B, is like you can give yourself permission to slow down in the process so that you learn to tune into what I'm feeling in my body, so that I'm responding versus reacting to what I'm afraid of. And I think that's the journey you're on. And I know that we would love if you would keep us posted and just let us know how you're doing and send us an email and let us know how you're going with that space of slowing down and tuning into what's inside of you. Okay.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you coming on. This is great. And yeah, like Danae said, please let us know, keep us posted, and maybe we'll do even like a follow-up later. Check in with you.
Yes, we'll do that for sure.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm so glad we had that conversation. I feel like that's something that, we've talked about. It can be really challenging to hold space for what are some of the cultural components that really need to be honored as we are still attempting to do some of the individuation work that we support clients with,
Yeah. And I've had a lot of people actually reach out to me, like whether it's DMs or whether it's like in the lab, talk about how it's really tough. I think, I think I spoke to this in the actual episode, but like the generational difference too. And I think there is this push and this drive to respect both. Like you said, it's the and, not the but, right? It's like, I can see the importance of, let's say, like the collectivistic cultural components, and I still want to have autonomy, and I want to find, space to be my authentic self. And what does that mean? What does that look like? How do I do that within the confines of the family structure? And I don't want to be disrespectful and all of these things. So I think that Sarah puts words to it all beautifully and really brings the struggle to light. And I think it's just that. I think it's like holding the and instead of it being a but.
Yeah. I feel like we talk about a lot that there's no such thing as one-way liberation, or that one person is liberated through any experience. And I think what I find a lot of times is, as we attempt to, as you so beautifully just said, hold the and of, I want to respect my family and my culture and, our values, and I need to step into some version of my authentic self that is expanding. I think we give a little bit of permission to our family, and sometimes like our parents and our community, really, to do that for themselves as well,
But it does not mean it's not uncomfortable. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Cheaper Than Therapy.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
And if you want to connect with us, you can find us on Instagram at Vanessa S. Bennett
and at Danae Logan Selkin.